So I guess I'm ready to start now.
Okay, I guess you are.
So can we turn the lights on just a little bit? Cause, just down a little bit for a moment. Oh wait, no, time's out. I'll just get started. The precept of this, I put together a bunch of different artworks, roughly around this idea of how can we move together in a richer manner, in a more lively, interesting way. But when I say that, I'm thinking about something in particular. And what I'm thinking about is that as an artist, I'm really interested in cultural and social change. And I'm interested in policy, but more than that, I'm really interested in the human element of that. So a lot of my work that I've been doing recently feels a lot like group building exercises that I'm sure that many of you have encountered. So I think in a moment I'm going to ask you to do a group building exercise. And I want you to imagine that the skills that you are going to be using in this following group building exercises may be intrinsic to the world changing in some manner. So as you're going to do what I'm going to ask you to do, I want you to possibly, in those moments where you can hold yourself together, I want you to reflect on the skills that you're using to effectively communicate with your peers and to effectively trust your peers, and to feel your peer. So can I ask everyone who wants to participate to stand up and move around the middle area somewhere here. And you want to, let's get in a circle,
There's a hole.
So this is a group exercise that starts off with everyone turning to their right and giving the person in front of them a shoulder massage. If you want, yeah, we'll keep it here. You're welcome. And let's turn around and do the other person behind you, who's now in front of you.
This isn't working. You can do it, Nathan. I believe in you. No, my muffin! So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit on your lap, and you're going to sit on the person behind your lap. Okay. But I'm telling you because just so you're not going to be surprised. Okay. I'll facilitate that in a moment.
All right, so you can put your hands out. Now, for the next part, we're going to need everyone to take maybe a half step forward, especially you people where you're not so packed in. You want to pack in a little bit closer? Now we're going to do, and everyone needs to be in the circle, so come inside.
Come on, Sterling. Come on.
All right, so what I'm going to do, we're going to take this, getting a massage while you're standing up, or massaging the state to change it into the way that you would like it to be while standing up is difficult. But from a seated position, pushing the state around, or the police or whoever's in power from a seated position, now that's power. Because the people who have real power in this country, they're not standing up, they're seated, they're comfortable and relaxed. So I want you to imagine that the person in front of you is someone that you're going to be changing, but you're going to do it from a seated position. And the way that we're going to do that is, well, we're all going to turn to our right. Right. No, oh yeah, that way. Let's make it to the left. The last way we were going. Yeah. We're all going to face this way. And you're going to have a seat on the person's lap behind you. Now the way that this works, We have to move this. You guys got to move in a little tighter. Take a half step in more. Take a half step in more. Now, the way that this is going to work is I am going to sit on the, what's your name? On Claudia's lap.
Yeah.
Then Claudia is going to sit on Susanna's lap, and so on until the last person, which is you,
Amara.
Amara is going to sit on my lap. Then we're going to attempt
To stand on each other.
We're going to attempt to massage each other so well that we end global warming. Are you ready? All right. Get closer. We need some people over here. We need some people over here. We need some people. We need more people. Massage the state. Relax. You're changing the world from a seated position. Oh, we gotta complete this. We need 2 more people. 2 more people. 2 more people. It's okay. It's okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Opa! Thank you. Yeah. So, as an artist, one of the things that I do, and I'll spend more time talking about this, I don't know, much later on, is I make these along with my partner, Kimberly, right over there, and her lovely daughter, Juniper. I make these maps, and this is a map to Los Angeles called Scores for the City, and they're weird maps. I hand them out for free, but I'm just going to read a poem here. It's an acrostic. It spells, well, an acrostic means like Robby, R, radical, O, ownership, B, boy, and it becomes a poem. So the poem is frame, shapes, frame. And I'm going to read this to you. Feel Los Angeles. Reality is just that, a shape, meant to shape eventuality. Situations mold consciousness. Cycling, riots, muralism. How will the intentionality of the Wilshire witches form oil industrial future? Arts in the ever-expansive field. Possibly expand Southern California's imagination. For the city is made up of ready-made stages. Angelino's movement choices are endemic. Stimulate something visionary now. So, next image. Oh, thank you. So, I'm interested in visual artwork that engages people with, I like that last sentence. I'm going to read it again. Stimulating something visionary. I like getting people together and doing certain things to think about other things. This was a project that I did recently that we're going to revisit this at the end. It was called the I and We Collective Movement Workshop for Beginners, and it involved a set of sculptures that were all participatory. And in order to engage with these sculptures, you had to play with these sculptures. And there's a set of drawings all along the walls that expand some of the ideas. And the sculptures were involved in a 2-hour class that I taught in this gallery called the Elizabeth Foundation in New York City. And I had, I perfected the class, but I taught the same class 5 times. And the class was a performance, as it were, even though each time I did it, the performance was different because the students were different. The students were made up of New York City artists and New York City social change activists, people who had been involved with the Occupy movement and people who had been involved with who are currently involved with justice for individuals with AIDS. Next image. So, one of the central things in my artwork is people talking and sharing about big ideas. And just to give you a size of this installation, these are 4 of the students, and I gave them a task to imagine if the revolution happens right now. What are you going to do in it? What's your job? Are you going to be a functionary for the revolution? Are you going to be someone who tells people what to do? Are you going to be someone who is at a barricade with a peace sign or a Molotov cocktail? Or are you going to be someone who's writing poems for the revolution? And the prompt was asking people to imagine if any sort of sweeping moment of social change is upon us, how are you going to involve yourself in that moment? Next image. So a little bit more about the pieces themselves in it. This is called the social movement rail slide, and it's kind of like, well, it's a slide, and the way that the slide works is 2 people sit on it, and they try to balance on that beam. In order to sit on the slide, this first person here has to claim a position. The second person has to claim a position that's opposite of that, and then they see if they could balance from their difference and take a journey down the slide. Can we get the next image, because it will explain it a little bit more. One side of the slide, it's a little dull, is labeled reformer, and the other side is labeled radical. So someone would say, I think they would name an issue. The issue that they would name, per se, would be student loans or capitalism. Let's take a big one. Capitalism. And someone would say capitalism is a problem because it creates a world of haves and have-nots. And they would say, I'm going to take a radical position. I'm going to say, we must blow up all banks now. And someone would say, I have problems with capitalism, but I don't think blowing anything up is going to solve the problem. They would take a reformist position, and they would sit on the slide opposite them and say, radical, I will go on this journey of social movement with you, but I have a different position. I'm a reformer, and I think what we need to do is legislate banks more in a more humane, just manner, where people aren't always thrown under the wheel of big business. And together, they would try to balance themselves out and slide down the rail. Next image. So here's myself sliding down this rail with somebody, but inevitably, it's very hard to slide on the rail of social movements. And for 2 people of difference to come to agreement, and often what happened is, next image, you just kind of fall over the place, because you can't really, it's very hard for 2 people to balance like this. But what was really exciting about this piece is often, this is all people who are sliding on the social movement rail slide, they've had real world experiences trying to make changes in the world and working with the tension of people who have different ideas of how to solve a problem. And often people who have different ideas of how to solve a problem, they can't balance. And you find so much in history of social movements and the history of this country, people who have a shared goal, but their means to get to that same goal are just diametrically opposed, or so they think, and they can't come to terms, and they fall off the rail slide. Anyway, next image. This is a collective bondage device. And the idea of this is you get a bunch of people who are strapped into this thing together, and the way that this thing moves, it's a pretty simple construction, is when this person moves this foot, this person is forced to move that foot. And when this person is forced to move their foot, this person is forced to move that foot. So you get a bunch of people who are basically tied together. When one person moves, the other person moves. But what happened in this bondage device was not particularly big movements. Just as before where I facilitated you guys to do a big circle sit, what I facilitated here was people to talk about how they fit together in groups. When they come, like in a classroom situation like this, when you sit in a classroom situation, how is it that you experience the classroom? What are the strengths of being together with a bunch of your peers and working together? And I would facilitate a conversation asking people, when you work with groups of people to solve problems in the world, what is it that you really enjoy about that? What works for you really well about it? And I would hear things like, oh, the creativity in the room is spectacular. And then when we get an idea going, we could really all activate it in really great ways. And what was really fun is that when someone would get excited, the other people in the bondage device would feel the energy, just the agitation of that person getting really excited. Next image. The converse of that would be the second prompt, which was, tell me about how you felt crushed by working together in groups. What way have you felt dominated by others? What ways have you felt like you were working with people and they stole your ideas? What way has it been when you've been working with people and they've taken away your voice? When you've been working with people and they took away your sense of power in the world? And what was really interesting about this thing is you start to get the person who was talking and sharing kind of feeling more and more and more pitiful, and kind of like this, and then they try to get comfortable, and then they jab outwards, and then everyone else would just start to feel really uncomfortable because they're tied together in the work of being together in a group and talking about it, and literally experiencing the subtle movement of the person who's sharing the pain of being in a group while in this impromptu group in an art gallery. Next image. We're going to go back to this at the end here, but this is this ladder for citizen participation. And we're going to try to get you guys to climb this ladder at the end. Climb the ladder to the very top. The one that fell over. It has been done. I should say that the ladder for citizen participation is based off of something that actually happened. I'm going to introduce it now, I guess. In the mid-1960s, the Lyndon Baines Johnson administration had this idea that the way to lift people out of poverty in the country was to give them money to do interesting things with. Pretty straightforward idea. There's a lot of excess wealth in the world. Why don't we have a way to give people who are actively using more capital to do interesting things together to empower them? And they created a lot of different mechanisms to do that, to empower people to do it. But one of the ways that they did it was creating this program called the Model Cities. And Model Cities basically said, if you're a community and you could get your friends together and organize your friends together to make good decisions together, we'll give you money. And we need maximum feasible citizen participation to create change. And we're not going to give groups to people, we're not going to give money to people who are telling people what to do. We want people to come through with their own solutions of what to do with it. To create this word up here, which is barely visible, citizen control. To control, to take over from governments. And we're going to give money to people to take over the job of governments. And this woman wrote, we'll go back to this, next. So that climbing ladder thing was a part of that show, and I would facilitate people to get to the top of the ladder. So I'm going to go back in time here. I'm really, somewhere in the back of my mind as an artist, I think I'm formed by the next series of images I'm going to show you. This is my great-grandfather here. He spent all of his leisure time at the beach doing acrobatics. This was his hobby. Apparently in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 20s, I don't know. This is what people did. They got together with their friends and they did acrobatics. This is in New York City. He was a shoemaker, and then when he wasn't cobbling, he was doing acrobatic stunts with his friends. And he was also taking photographs of people doing acrobatic stunts with his friends. Next image. This image is really, I don't think you can see it from where you're seated. Can we turn off the lights or turn them down just for a moment here?
Right there on the wall. Devin, going to get him? Keep them both down. There we go. There we go. Really dark.
The other thing that my grandfather liked to do is he liked to organize with the Hungarian Socialist League, the Yorkville Hungarian Socialist League. And this is in New York City in the 1930s. It's in Manhattan. It's in a neighborhood called Yorkville, which is now thought of as the Upper East Side. But at the time, it was a Hungarian immigrant neighborhood. And I have no idea why the Yorkville Socialist League is meeting on a stoop in New York City this afternoon. But I do know that they're meeting with this group, which is the Young Workers Athletic Club. So back in the 1930s, people in New York City used to hang out as socialists and do acrobatics as socialists together, as communists, as people who behave differently. And I started this conversation talking about Scores for the City and that map that I produced. And Scores for the City, which I'll talk about more in a second, is a map that tries to encourage people to behave differently together in public. And if people are behaving differently together in public, this is the type of behavior that I'm really fascinated by. A bunch of socialist acrobatics getting together in New York for, this is what they do. Instead of playing video games or soccer or spending money at a mall, they get together and they make banners and hang out like this. Next image. So another thing my grandfather used to do is, this is my grandfather. He's at the bottom of this 3-person stack. He's holding them up. As an acrobat, he was the bottom, literally. That's what they called this guy here, who would be charged with holding everyone up. And this is at a, this is like, I'm sure most of you have heard of like fraternal lodges, like the Kiwians or the Lions clubs, or I don't know, what do they have around here, or where you're from? Where Elks, Masons, yeah, Rotary, exactly. That type of thing. But this is, in New York in 1934, they didn't have those sorts of organizations for working class immigrants. They had this thing, which was called the Industrial Workers Order. And the Industrial Workers Order, the International Workers Order was like the Elks Club. But beyond that, if you were a member of this thing, you could get home loans. You could get a loan, a small business loan. You could get primitive form of health insurance. This organization, which was set up by an intentional socialist community with the idea of helping to develop a socialist future, set up these clubs for immigrants in the urban centers to find entertainment and pleasure. And this isn't a party meeting. This is just a Friday night at the Elks Lodge with a jazz band in the back and a bunch of acrobats up front. But it happens to be a weird socialist organization that absolutely makes no sense in our world today. But this is how people used to behave 70 years ago, in part. I'm fascinated by this. Last image of this. This is one that really captivated me when I first saw this. And what you have here is another, this is another image of acrobats. But when I started to realize what was going on in this image and which acrobatic group this was of my grandfather's, I was like, oh, duh, this is amazing. This is the Young Workers Athletic Club, which again is a socialist organization of acrobats. And they're using their acrobatics to express political ideas. This is a tableau, like you would find in a historical painting. It's a tableau with a pyramid of some kind going to the top here, where you have that woman with the bandana, the kerchief around her neck, with her hand of justice here, and her fist of workers' power here. And this is like 70 years old. This is what people used to do for leisure, hang out as groups and make socialist tableaus in the park. This of a political philosophy that, for all intents and purposes, people view as past, gone, will never happen again. But here these people are representing it as if it was just another day in the park. Fascinating to me. Next image. So back to this. This is that guide that I held up for a moment. It's Scores for the City. And I should say these guides are put out by something called the Llano del Rio Collective, which is something that I'm a part of. And we printed 2,000 copies of this map guide, and we give it away free to people who live in LA County. So if you live in LA County, you could send us your address and we will pay for the cost of postage and put this thing in the mail to you so you can get it in your mailbox. Also, if you live in a place where people gather who would be interested in Scores for the City, the chances are that you could go to that place and you could pick one up. Well, not every place, but that is to say, we publicize that a new map is done. Go to this place where contemporary dance is, or go to this place where contemporary art is, or go to this place where contemporary politics happen, and you will be able to pick up this free map guide and gain knowledge and imagination for the city. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the map for a second. So Scores for the City, the subtitle of it is Social Choreography and Imagination for Southern California. And what Scores for the City does is it works with that idea of scoring, both a musical score and score in the sense of a John Cage score or a happening score. That is, not a play script, but a score that sets out certain measures of time where certain behaviors will happen through a duration of measure of time. And the front of this map locates 4 different behavioral projects that we see as scores that individuals actually created. And these scores are a very strange behavior that people in Los Angeles at times have exhibited. So Ronald Reagan, he was the president from 1980 to or maybe 81 to 89. This is his funeral site, or his grave site in Simi Valley, which is in Ventura County, but may as well be in LA County. This guy here, who you can't see that well, his name is Ron Arpachuk. This is the door to the entrance to the library. This is Arpachuk. This is a Reagan banner. Reagan was buried there, I believe, and don't quote me on this, in 98 or something like that, 99. He died. They brought his corpse to this place. Joel he still is, a math teacher in LAUSD, meaning Los Angeles Unified School District. Joel hated Ronald Reagan. He hated him so much that every morning for an entire year, he drove to the Reagan Monument, which happened to be not far from his house, and gave it the finger for 5 minutes a day.
Oh, yeah.
This is behavior this guy exhibited every day for an entire year. I'm interested in sharing that behavior with people. This, as you can see here, this is a symbol for the Wilshire Witches. The Wilshire Witches, if any of you, who here knows this Los Angeles at all? Okay, so maybe a tenth of you, so I'll generalize. One of the things that people know about Los Angeles is that somewhere in the middle of the city of LA there's a big tar pit. And there's dinosaur bones that you can see in there. Well, the Wilshire Witches was from 1973 to 1983, an actual practicing group of witches, like Wiccan witches, who would have circle dances, witch ceremonies on the tar pit site, the site of these dinosaur bones. And one of the things, and that's fascinating enough as far as I'm concerned, but one of the things that's even more fascinating about the Wilshire Witches is that when they would sing their witch chants during the what do they call them? I'm going to get my witch terminology. They're Sabbaths, thank you. They would sing, when they would be singing, "We are all part of the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain." a part of their practice and what they talked about and in their logo was this idea of the tar pit being a place of ancient past where the bones of dead dinosaurs and dead prehistoric creatures were lying amidst oil, that they were in the center of the city in their present day, thinking about those people who had died in the oil. They were also thinking about how in their minds, the oil that surrounded them in the park was going to lead to their future demise as well. And as they circled around, following the patterns of the stars and moon, they were very much aware and practicing the inevitability of the collapse of the civilization in midst they were dancing in, and celebrating it at the same time. This is a diagram to something that never actually happened. Los Angeles is popularly thought of as a city where people never get together in a peaceful way. And Los Angeles, as you may or may not know, is a city that has had a series of cataclysmic riots, as it were. So you have the 92 riots, the 1964 riots. 2 summers ago, you had rioting a few blocks away from my house. So it's a city that can never solve social problems without mass violence. And in the year 2000, I believe it was, something like that, 2002, this movie Crash, 2006, won the Academy Award. And Crash was this film that shows the city of Los Angeles, like, you have an immigrant community here, you have a Pakistani community here, you have an African American community here, you have a white rich community here. And the narrative of the film is that all these people of difference in the city of LA, they get together and they fight. And that's the movie, and it wins an Academy Award. Well, the city councilman for the 15th council district, he was like, LA's so much better than that. We should have a civic dance pageant. We should get all the citizens of LA together to dance. And they're going to represent their neighborhood, and they're going to dance lovely, and we're going to show the world that LA can get together and dance and not have any violence. So this is you can't really see it, but this is a schematic drawing for that, and this is City Hall where it was supposed to take place. The city council said that is the most ridiculous idea and we don't have any money for it, and it never happened. Can we get the next image? So the back of these maps have these essays and these prompts that further encourage people who read them and engage with them to think about how it is that they act in public space, and how it is that public space informs how you act. So for example, there is, let's start with this one here. This is just an essay that talks about how being on a bicycle and riding a bike in the city, and I've experienced this. When you're riding a bike in the city, you see so many things that you've never seen from the seat of a car. The city, you notice smells, you notice sounds, you notice people in such an extremely different way. And it's just an essay that talks about that. This is a set of performance scores from someone that we all know that gives prompts for how you might want to be in the city in a different way. And one of them is have a picnic on a billboard and just hang out with your friends there on a billboard as traffic passes you by. Enjoy the scenery. That might be a nice way to spend your afternoon. Not something you would normally think about doing, but that space is there for you to use.
Is it? Oh.
This right here is a documentation of a piece called Super Clogger, which was a freeway puppet show. It was someone took a conversion van and then scripted a puppet show and drove into traffic, intense traffic jams. And while cars were sitting there on the road, hating being stuck there, he would throw down the back of this van and a puppet show would pop up and a play about traffic would appear. And he would also put a sign out that said, the audio for this play is being broadcast on this FM radio signal, and he would tell you the signal, let's say it's 93.5, and you would turn to that station and the puppets, you'd realize that the puppets in the traffic that you came upon randomly were having a dialogue. And they were talking about traffic while you were driving in traffic. Just a different way to be in traffic. The final thing is just an essay that talks about how the act of creating art in itself created the idea of what it means to be a Chicano. And it's an essay that talks about how creating murals and artwork on the walls of LA produced the Chicano or the contemporary, or the Chicano identity. We can get to the next image. So I've showed you a bunch of things that have inspired me and a bunch of things that I've produced that talk about behavior. So this is another work that I did where I worked with a group of people to think about behavior and to think about politics. This is a project I did called the Pyramids for the... I wrote my title wrong. It's called Pyramids for the Capitalist System. And what I did was I worked with a group of amateur acrobats, and 2 years ago were the major Occupy protests going on around the country, and what we did was we rehearsed this human pyramid for several weeks, and at the bottom here are the workers. In the middle here right here are the management class. Above them are the army and the police class. Above them is the church, and above them are the capitalists. And working with these amateur acrobats, I developed with them certain tableaus based off of class relationships and power relationships within society. We performed a series of these pyramids down at LA City Hall, where the occupation was happening in LA. Next image. So I don't know how well you can see this slide, but one of the things that's a part of my practice is I will take photographs of performances that I do with people, and from those photographs I will turn them into large drawings. So this drawing is just a little bit smaller of what you see projected here, and I don't know how well you can see it. This is a woman who was playing a police officer who's standing on the back of a woman who's playing a manager. Maybe she's a pencil pusher at Kinko's. And what I was interested in the drawing is bringing out the emotional qualities of these people at the moment when they're playing out these acrobatics. So here you have this woman who, playing the cop, she really enjoyed power tripping as a cop. She loved telling this woman what to do. And this woman, she really kind of did like it. And the drawing captures the middle management woman smiling for the camera and smiling for the middle management person standing on their back. Next image. This is a drawing. It's, again, a little smaller than this. This is a worker. This is the middle manager. He's been holding her up in the star position. Does anyone here, did anyone here ever do cheerleading? Yes. Okay, good. This is the Russian star. One of the coolest thing about this project was I worked. Can we go back 2 images? One more. This woman at top, she was the Oklahoma, she was a captain of the 1991 Oklahoma state champions in cheerleading from Oklahoma. So I worked with her to work with these acrobats, and she knew what she was doing. Let's go forward. This was the Russian star again. She had this guy hold the Russian star with this woman over his head for, I would say, around 15 minutes while I got the perfect shot. And all the time while this worker is holding the management class up, she's getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and he's just having to hold the weight of this woman up. And I don't know if you could really see it there, but the drawing captures that moment of he's just getting too exhausted to keep this woman aloft. Next image. This is another one where it's another balance mover where you have the worker at the bottom holding up the management, and they're kind of creating this yin-yang. But how long can they hold this up and together? This is Nancy Pop.
Yeah, that was my girl.
This is from a series of drawings that I did. And this series of drawings was called Blockades. The basic premise of this thing was behavior. I want to see behavior of my friends get more interesting. And I asked Nancy, I want you to find a place in Los Angeles where you would intervene in your body to prevent something from happening. You have to stop people from doing something. And Nancy probably is going to differ in how I tell this story, but what Nancy chose to do was to block with her body the intersection to the 2 freeway on-ramp. And she stood there blocking traffic for no obvious reason, possibly just for me to take pictures, and just stood there and prevented people from getting on the freeway for a few moments. I should say this drawing is to scale of what it is here. We'll go to the next image. Oh, before you go there, I should say...
What's the triple F? Yeah, why?
Yeah, Nancy, why the triple F?
The triple F is a t-shirt that one of my exes made. She's a designer.
Whoa.
Fabulous fucking feminist.
Before... There was the intensity of Nancy's gaze as she was staring down a line of cars. Next image. This is my friend Charles. Charles didn't necessarily... He took the idea of stopping somebody from doing something a little bit differently. His idea was to hang out in front of an army recruiter for 2 hours and to talk to everyone who went in and out of that space about suicide rates among the armed forces. So he didn't block anyone from going in there. He just told them, you may go to Iraq or Afghanistan, but when you come back, it's kind of a depressing time. And that's what he chose to do with that prompt.
And the army didn't say anything? Like, hey, can you leave, please?
Nope, no one came out. We were in a public space. We knew the legal issues there. And they were uncomfortable with us, and they knew what we were doing, but they didn't bother us, no.
Nice.
Next image. All right, so this is the last piece I'm going to show you before we do a final group activity. Hopefully this should work, but don't press that thing first. This is a performance that I asked these 3 people to do. And the performance went like this. I said, I want you to find 2 people who you feel will hold you up, and will hold you up for a long time. People that you trust, who give you support, and could bear your weight for multiple blocks. And I want you to ask them to hold you up and carry you for multiple blocks as you yell at everybody and everything that you come across and tell them what they should do. So hopefully the audio will work.
Oh, yes.
All the people in their cars right around here, get out and walk. Get out and bike. All the people who are in school who are relying on books, on people to teach them. You can learn a lot yourself. You have the power. You just need to walk around and explore life. Tie my shoes. Don't tie my shoes. It's okay. McDonald's addicted me. You guys addicted me as a child, and I'm angry at you. I'm angry about that. You waste a lot of calories. They gain weight. You have control. Learn about chickpeas. Don't go to a community in another country where they have their own food history and food culture and just turn it into your culture. You're the worst of America. America's a land of freedom and a land of you can speak your mind. Panda Express, the pandas are endangered. There's only 2,000 miles. Way of consumption. And that terrible music just plays. Who is it? It's not an individual. It's not a piece. Get out of your cars. Get out of your convertible. Think you live in the California dream. Get out of the bars, into the streets. Out of the bars, into the streets. Have your voice. That's a great way. Support your local business. Get out of Del Taco.
All right. So I'm going to turn on the lights here. So this is a pedagogical exercise. This ladder can be put together and it can be climbed. If you guys go from me, let's see. The first one is manipulating you, or if you go from being manipulated, well, I should say, this ladder is based off of a diagram where you go from people being manipulated where you go from people being manipulated by, sorry, let me catch my breath. This is based off a diagram. And the diagram starts off with manipulation and runs to therapy, consultation, informing, delegated power, and ends at citizen control. Hoo-yah. And citizen control is a moment where people say, screw you. I can do for my own. I'm not going to be manipulated by the people who say they're in charge of me. I'm going to take control of my life and take control of the things that are around me. This is a broken ladder, and it can be climbed. So the challenge is this. We need to get a group of people together to figure out how to stack this ladder horizontally, no stacking on the floor, and then how to hold it together while someone tries, or several people try to climb as high as they can to the top, to have citizen control amongst the students of Idlewild. To not be idle anymore, but to be wild. Wild! So, the ladder is just going to sit there until people stand up and take control. Okay.
Okay, who's climbing this stuff?
Not me.
Your number is small. Me? I have 5. Oh my god.
Alright, I'll do it.
Yeah,
Someone's gonna get in and climb it. You ready? Who's gonna climb it?
Where are the others? Where are the others? She's just going to get the delegated power. How depressing is that?
Citizen control. Okay, it's fine.
Okay, how high is she gonna go?
As high as she can.
We got you.
We need more people.
We got you, Francis.
Oh my god. Careful, careful.
Francis!
Hold the tight, hold the tight.
Oh my god! Oh my god! The roof! Oh! Grab the barn! Yeah! Now get down.
Let her get down. Let her fall.
Just fall. Just fall.
Not on me. Yeah, this is the end.
Hold tight. There you go.
Alright, that was bad. You got this, Francis. Woo!
Good job. Is that Q&A or is that all? Does anyone else want to climb? Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
I wanted to swing.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Alright, guys, so Yona's gonna climb it.
Power.
Power to
Careful, Fiona. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
You. Come on.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
More support, people.
I got her too. Okay.
I feel like she dropped.
Oh, say na na na.
It's so powerful. I love it.
Yes, you can do it. Hold tight.
Hold tight.
Do not move.
Don't kill.
friend. I know she did. You get a pinky stepped on.
Yeah.
All the way.
Oh, be careful.
Hold tight.
Frenchie's commentary expresses,
This is insane. I can't feel my hands anymore.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so wait.
No, let it fall. Let it fall. Let it fall. It's kind of it's nice and dramatic.
Okay, ready?
Or it could be balanced.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go. See what happens.
Let it go. Don't worry.
It's okay. Let it fall. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. Before you go, one of the guides that I have, if I printed this guide called The Antagonist Guide to the Assholes of LA. And I should explain it just a little bit. The outside is a running list of around 80 places that people have decided were assholes within LA. Like jerks. Yeah, American Apparel's there. And then there's like a bunch of essays that frame, I don't know, that give voice to, just talk about how naming somebody or something as an asshole could be seen as a work of art, and gives some histories and theories around working with the idea of people being assholes. Anyway, I'm going to put them over on the piano. If you want to take one before you go, you can.